board and share screen. Okay, great. So, um, so I'm going to open up Rhino. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a file I already have, so for rendering. Okay, so if this is my little area, it looks like the seaplane's wacky here, so I'm going to reset my seaplane. So seaplane, world, top. Okay, so it's a little bit more normal. It looks like my model's also kind of like moved off the wall. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to move it. So I can type in M for move. I can select the corner of this and move it to 0, 0, 0, 0, hit enter. Okay. So let's say I want to do a section perspective that kind of cuts through the corner of this building. The first thing I need is a clipping plane. So I'm going to type in clipping plane. And then it's going to ask me where I want to put it. So there's 3 ways to do it. Either it's a 3-point, a vertical, a center, or around a curve. So different ways to do that. So if I'm doing a 3-point, I need 3 points to define the plane. So I could do, for example, this point, this point. Oops, sorry, hang on. Control Z, I had rectangle on there. Clipping plane. Okay, so automatically we'd want to do a rectangle. So if I want to do a rectangle, I could just draw the rectangle, and that's going to give me a vertical clipping plane. Okay. The next I can do is a 3-point. So at that point, that's when I could kind of pick 3 corners that are maybe not all planar to each other. So maybe this third one's over here. And then that allows me to kind of get a perspective more like that, where some parts are cut more than other ones. So I can do 3-point. I haven't used center before. Let's see what that does. Oh, I can do the center of my rectangle. Or around a curve I also haven't used before. Let's see if we can figure that out. So if I make a curve, will this work? If I do clipping plane, around curve. So I guess I could make the curve and then I could kind of move this. I wonder if I'm able to move this along the curve then. So if I move it, not so much. Okay, so I think that one's not as useful. The other one I like a lot. So I usually either use 3-point or I use vertical. So then clipping plane, vertical, lets you kind of define an edge you're cutting through. And then you would just be looking at it this way. I can always move the clipping plane after the fact. So I can kind of figure out where exactly I want it. I can also rotate it after the fact. So it won't cut everything in my other views, but I can see it in my other views. So I can decide that I want this to be a little bit more angled and I can just rotate it in top view. So maybe I wanted to go from like corner to corner. As I have a view like this. And maybe I'll bring this back a little bit. Okay, so let's say this is the section I want to work with. I can hide my clipping plane and it'll still clip. I can change my view properties. So when I'm in perspective view, if I come over here, you'll notice that I can change the projection. So I can make it a 2-point perspective, which will just make everything a little bit more dramatic. I can also change my camera properties here. So I can change like where my eye height is, either by moving the camera this way, like you'll notice the Z is changing, or I can write in, like if I know I wanted somebody's eye level, I could write it in at 5.5 feet, and then I know I'm right at eye level. You can also rotate your camera if you want to. So like if I wanted to just at 45, That didn't really work. So I don't know if rotation's just not working at the moment, which is fine. But the other one, so I normally would just change the location. So I often do that one right at eye height. And then I often change my lens length. So lens length is like if you have like a 35mm camera or you have like more of a fisheye. So if I make this like 15 and then I zoom in, it's going to make all my angles much more dramatic. To show that more, if I make this like at 5 and then zoom in, then my angles start to get like really dramatic, like I'm super fisheye, right? So that's one thing to play with. 35 is like more or less normal. So that's like pretty normal. Or if I do something that's like 50, it'll keep my verticals straight for longer. So that's something else you can play with. Once I have my section perspective and I'm happy with the cut, you've done this a lot of times at this point, you would just select, I guess, two things. First thing is I normally save my view. So I'm going to change my lens length to 15. Make sure I'm right at 5.5. I kind of want to see here though. Maybe do it 6. 6 is kind of low on this though. 8. Okay. Maybe I'll zoom out, zoom to here. Okay, so I'm going to save my view. So I go here to set view, named views, save this view. Then I'm going to SEL visible. Hit enter to select the entire view and then do a make 2D of this. I don't necessarily need hidden views, hidden lines. I'm going to maintain my source layers, hit OK. So now if I go to my top view, I can see that the line drawing was made right here. And I can use this and bring it into Illustrator, play with it, print it out, whatever I want to do with it. If I do want any kind of shading and rendering, I can also go back to this perspective, make sure it's still in that perspective. So set view perspective 1, and then I can go up to render and either render it in Lumion or I could just render it right in Rhino. I don't have any lighting in here right now, it looks like. So it looks like I would need to add some lights for this to really work. And I don't know if we've actually did that in Rhino yet, but basically all my light tools are right here. So I could select lights, let's see. Invert selection. I need to add some lights. So I'm trying to remember where lights are. So I have my sun and my skylight. But where do I add lights? Okay, so if I go under rendering, I can create a point light or I can create a directional light, or I create a spotlight. So I could put in some point lights and you can kind of see them here. And then I can go through and select those, and you can change the color and the intensity. If I put this in ray trace, I might have like a slightly better idea of how bright that is, if it's bright enough. Or it might just come out crazy looking like that. So it's not that helpful. So let's see what it looks like if I render it. This thing is in my way. Oh, no. Sorry. Okay, so now if I go to render, oh, that is what it's going to come out like. It's going to be super bright. So I think those lights I added in are too bright, or the skylight's too bright. So I would need to adjust that. So I'm going to stop this. I can go back here and select lights, and then over here, maybe I bring my intensity down. Then maybe also if I go under rendering, I can go to render properties. And maybe instead of, looks like I have my lights. skylight. So maybe I don't need my skylight on. Let's try taking that off. Hit OK. Sometimes changing the background color, the background helps. So if I go back to render properties. It's still looking kind of nuts. Let's see if it gets any better if I render it. Okay, so that's starting to look a little bit better. I think I just have a lot of crazy colors in here, which is contributing to this being a little nuts. But I can use my denoisers on this. So whichever one works on your computer, it will depend on your graphics card. Oh, doesn't work on the full computer. Okay. So anyway, I could take those two into Illustrator and overlay them and play with them, just like you've been doing on your other drawings. So I didn't save that at all. If you are lucky and that happens to you, if you go to downloads, and then I can try to look for that file. So let's see, Rhino. Okay, so see this one. I think I'm not lucky. So if you're lucky, it'll say for rendering, and then it'll have a backup file. See how this thing says like Rhino backup model? And then if I rename this, I have to show the extension though. So if I go to properties, and then I need to show the extension. Hang on, I don't do this all the time. Maybe it's under here. Details. Okay, so over here where it says file name extensions, I can add that on here. And then if I go here to rename, I can rename this file, like take off the BAK on it. And then if you open it, it's a Rhino file. So that's how backups work in Rhino. It doesn't save it as often as I would like. Like it would have been nice if it saved one from today and it didn't. And that was probably 20 minutes and it didn't save it. But every once in a while, that's helpful. Okay, does anybody have any questions about how to make a section perspective? Do you make your clipping plane? You do your make 2D? You guys are good on that. Okay. So I think that's all the comments I have to make about hybrid drawing. I think like it's really up to you to figure out how you want to do it.